Could Starfield be getting delayed again is a question many people are asking in light of a lot of things that have transpired. I wanted to give you guys a good summary video about this. We've got comments from Phil Spencer. We've got Game Pass being sort of minimized in its role for the Xbox strategy. Matt Booty was on a podcast and made it pretty clear the order of Redfall Starfield release dates. And then what's the real cause for the Starfield delay? I think some of Phil Spencer's comments adds credence to my theory. I'm going to walk you through all those things. Make sure you hit subscribe and the bell button. These uploads are sort of replacing the morning live streams while I'm out of town, so make sure you're here for the live streams once I get back. So, Phil Spencer sat down with The Verge, and thegamer.com had the following to say. He explained how Bethesda came to the decision to delay Redfall and Starfield, and his reference to an ongoing conversation, I think, is actually sort of telling about what happened. He said, the decision to give the team the time to build the game that they feel they should be building is just the right thing to do. He noted it was less of a decision and more of an ongoing conversation with Bethesda's developers. He noted that being part of a larger organization like Microsoft was able to benefit them with other revenue streams to help cover the delay. Now, pointing it to it not being a decision but an ongoing conversation, I found to be pretty interesting. What exactly happened that led to the developers thinking this? Does this add credence to my theory? I'll talk about that at the end of the video, but is this just the role that Microsoft is now playing? Are they more active at Bethesda and saying, how's the game doing? How's it looking? I mean, if you think about it, they've had some games come out too early, and Phil Spencer talked about that. According to thegamer.com, he remembered having shipping games too early. Quote, we have experience shipping games too early. And he may be referencing Halo Infinite. It just seemed to come out and it didn't seem to be ready. Features were missing. Stuff wasn't working. And I think many people might be looking at that and saying, do you really want your other big flagship title? I do think Starfield is sort of being envisioned as a flagship title for the Microsoft platform. You don't want it coming out too early. So was this sort of a takeover, or maybe not necessarily a takeover, but sort of an injection of Microsoft oversight? Because he has more commentary about he wants teams to own their dates. He said, one of the things I've learned is that you want teams to feel like they own their dates. They deliver better when they feel like they own their own destiny with their games, so you wait for the real signal from the creative and production teams. Now, this sounds strange in light of Todd Howard's confidence about the November release date. Like, if you really analyze what Phil is saying, he's saying, listen, you get much better results when the teams are super confident, they own their dates, they're owning their destiny. He's saying, you wait for their signal. Well, then what happened? Why was Todd Howard out here saying that the date was set in ink and that the game was coming November 11th? Was Todd out of touch with his teams? Or did something else happen? Again, I'm going to outline that at the end of the video. I don't want to get into that just yet because there's other things sort of shifting in the dialogue here, right? So you got Phil Spencer saying, listen, we want these teams to own their dates. We don't want to ship things too early. This was an ongoing dialogue with Bethesda. All of that sounds like they have a more active role in Starfield, but also they're shifting the dialogue about Game Pass a little bit. So in this same interview, Spencer discussed how Game Pass does provide them with recurring revenue. However, according to The Gamer, even though Microsoft surely loves having people pay them a monthly fee, Spencer said that Xbox doesn't, quote, have the vision of everybody paying us $15 a month. This is in line with other comments recently sort of downplaying Game Pass's role in the structure and business strategy that Microsoft has. So they're essentially saying, listen, we don't expect everybody to do this. Some people are going to buy games. Some people don't belong on Game Pass. Some games don't belong on Game Pass. Now, many were people surprised to see the actual revenue breakdown that 15% of Xbox revenue is what Game Pass makes up. Many people thought that was kind of low compared to where they thought it was going to be. I thought it was low. I thought that was the big focus. Man, they were at 25 million. They're going to keep going. Well, in addition to finding that out, Phil Spencer was like, hey, we've pretty much tapped out how many people we're going to get on console. He says there's still room for growth for Game Pass on PC, but he said we kind of feel like we've got as many people as we're going to get on console, which means Game Pass growth has already slowed down significantly unless they can have some really big successful pushes on PC, which they could. Microsoft storefront's not so great on PC. Many people are just going to prefer Steam. I think that's going to be a significant adoption and conversion challenge for them. And If you take what Spencer's saying and you combine it with what Matt Booty said when he was on a podcast, all of it starts to sound like and add up to, I think Starfield's getting delayed again. I don't think it's going to make the first half of 2023, which is what we were promised. There's Game Pass advertisements with a little asterisk saying first half of 2023. We were told that everything shown at the Xbox Bethesda showcase would be out in the next 12 months, and that was in the middle of the year. When Matt Booty was on the Friends Per Second podcast with Skill Up and some other people, he said, we obviously have Redfall from Arcane as we start to look down the road at the calendar, obviously Starfield coming up. Now there's two takeaway here. One's obvious. There's two takeaways and one's super obvious. Starfield's going to come after Redfall. The way he phrases this, it's structured in his mind that we have Redfall, and then as we start to look down the road of the calendar, then we have Starfield coming up. However, look down the road at the calendar does not sound like the first half of 2023. It doesn't sound to me, I don't want to read too much into it, that doesn't sound like Starfield's landing in close proximity to Redfall. It sounds like you're going to have Redfall, and then further down the road of the calendar, you're going to have Starfield. If you combine this with the placeholder date for Starfield not landing on December 31st, but December 29th, I've had people say, well, that's the last working day of the year. That's not how placeholder dates work. I've been covering games for a very, very long time, and anytime somebody picks the December hold date, it's December 31st, and that's just the generic, hey, it's coming in that year. But that also means if they're choosing December, one of two things is true. It's either landing in the fourth quarter of 2023, or they have no idea what quarter it's going to land in, so they chose the furthest date. So even if people are correct, even if you're looking at an actual release date of 2023 because they picked December because they don't know what quarter it's going to land in. If it's actually December 29th because that's when they envision the window being that quarter, then it's been delayed again. There's been radio silence about the game that said virtually nothing. There are interviews where Todd Howard says he likes to show things within a 5-month window of release, which means if we don't hear about Starfield in the first 3 months of 2023, it's likely been delayed out of the first half of 2023. Because what that means is, you basically need to hear about Starfield in January, because if you don't, and you hear about it in like February or March, that means roughly 4 to 5 months later, it's landing, which is outside of the first half of 2023. So if we get out of the first quarter of next year and haven't heard anything substantive about Starfield or been given a release date, then it ain't coming in that first half. Lastly, I promised you my theory, my Series S theory. This is not hate. This is based on multiple pieces of commentary from developers at ID Software to other developers about the Series S not being strong enough and being something that is difficult to optimize for. Now, if the dev team at Bethesda was in conversation with Microsoft and suddenly they were shaky and not confident on their release date, you have to ask what changed. Why would that suddenly happen? Well, what would suddenly happen is you're owned by Microsoft and you need the system that they have at the bottom, their bare minimum system. That's what you optimize for. You have to go for minimum requirements first. There were rumors that Starfield was going to be a PS5 timed exclusive, which means they might not have been looking at even remotely how do we optimize this game for Series S. It could have been in their purview, but not presently built, which means the dev comments that we've seen recently about the Series S and devs wanting to skip it, I know people want to denounce those developers as being small, they've worked on indie titles, or they don't know what they're talking about. There were two different developers that said the Series S is weak. One developer said there are developers right now asking to skip the Series S, which was a prediction that I made would happen, and both of these gentlemen went private on Twitter after they said this. Now, that's not the behavior of someone who just popped off and tried to blame things on the Series S. Also keep in mind, people kept saying, well, they didn't work on Gotham Knights, so they have no right to speak on things. Okay, that means they weren't trying to blame Gotham Knights on the Series S, like they didn't work on it. They didn't have a dog in the fight. So the fact that they sort of just interjected the Series S into the discussion means developers are talking about it. And if that's the case, I think a game like Starfield that had performance issues in its own gameplay trailer is surely going to have gameplay performance struggles on the Series S. Now, obviously, I want to know what you think. Leave a comment below. Since I am out of town, I'll try to interact as best I can in the comments since I'm not streaming the week of Thanksgiving. Streams will resume on the 28th. Leave those comments and I'll interact with you. Here are my thoughts. The Starfield delay that I think is likely coming has already happened. I believe that they are fundamentally having problems with the game on the Series S, and I also think recent comments from Matt Booty about looking down the calendar and seeing Starfield, and even some of what Phil Spencer said about letting the teams decide and own their date, I don't think you're going to see Starfield in the first half of 2023. So, if you like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell button, hit the like button, and I can see you in the next video.